Have you ever wondered what would happen if everything ended right now? Take a moment, just a brief moment, to imagine that this is your final breath, your final heartbeat. What would you be thinking about? What would you be grasping for? What would you be desperately trying to bring with you? Raymond Moody spent decades documenting the experiences of those who have touched death and returned. These extraordinary journeys into the threshold between life and death have consistently revealed a profound truth. In our final moments, everything we thought mattered suddenly doesn't. The material possessions we've accumulated, the status we've achieved, the wealth we've amassed, they all dissolve into insignificance when faced with the ultimate transition. In those moments between worlds, no one speaks of their beautiful home, their expensive car, or their impressive title. Nobody reaches for their stock portfolio or their designer clothes. Instead, a different reality emerges. As one woman described to Moody after her near-death experience, "It was as if I suddenly saw through everything I had spent my life pursuing. The things I thought were solid turned out to be shadows, and what I had ignored, love, connection, wonder, those were the only real thing." This profound shift in perspective isn't merely philosophical. It represents a fundamental truth about human existence that we spend most of our lives avoiding. We build our identities around what we possess. We measure our worth by what we own. We define our success by what we've accumulated. And yet, all of this is built upon the illusion of permanence, the unspoken belief that somehow these things will last forever, that they are truly ours. But what do we really own? What can we truly possess? The ancient wisdom traditions have always taught what modern near-death experiences confirm. Nothing material travels with us. Nothing external remains ours forever. Look around you right now. Everything you see that you call mine, your home, your devices, your treasured possessions, all of it was here before you and will remain long after you're gone. You are merely a temporary custodian, a brief guardian of objects that will eventually pass to someone else's hands. Even your body, the most intimate possession you believe to be yours, will one day return to the elements from which it came. The cells that compose you now are not the same ones you had 7 years ago. You are constantly changing, constantly transforming. Nothing is permanent. Nothing truly belongs to you forever. This realization can be terrifying. It can shake the very foundation of how we've constructed our lives and our sense of self. But those who have brushed against death often return with a surprising perspective. This impermanence isn't something to fear, but something to embrace. It doesn't diminish life, but enhances it. When we recognize the temporary nature of all we possess, we can begin to hold things lightly, to appreciate them fully in the moment without the desperate clinging that causes so much suffering. Consider the metaphor shared by a physician who experienced a profound near-death experience during cardiac arrest. He told Moody, "I realized I had been living like a man who fills his pockets with water, believing he can carry it with him. All my life I had been trying to possess things that simply couldn't be possessed." This powerful insight points to a fundamental truth. Our attachment to the material world is built on an impossible premise, that somehow we can make permanent what is inherently impermanent. The illusion of ownership runs deep in our cultural programming. From early childhood, we're taught to accumulate, to acquire, to amass. "This is mine" becomes one of our first and most fiercely defended concepts. We draw invisible boundaries around things and people, declaring our ownership, our right to control and possess. Yet death strips away these illusions instantly. In that final transition, the concept of ownership dissolves completely. Those who have experienced clinical death and returned often describe a profound shift in how they relate to possessions. They speak of a liberation from the weight of ownership, a recognition that the joy of life comes not from what we possess, but from what we experience, share, and become. What's remarkable about these accounts is their consistency across cultures, backgrounds, and belief systems. Whether the experiencer was religious or atheist, wealthy or poor, young or old, the same essential insight emerges. Nothing external travels with us. This raises the profound question at the heart of our exploration. If everything external falls away, if nothing material travels with us, what does remain? What can we possibly take with us when everything ends? The answer to this question holds the key to living a life of meaning, purpose, and peace. It points us toward what truly matters, what is genuinely worth investing our precious time and energy in during our brief journey through existence. The journey of those who have glimpsed beyond the veil of death reveals something extraordinary. What we carry forward isn't measured in possessions, but in presence, the quality of attention we've given to our lives, the depth of connection we've formed with others, the wisdom we've integrated into our being. These are the treasures that somehow transcend the boundary between worlds. When Moody interviewed thousands who had experienced clinical death, they consistently described a life review, not focused on achievements or acquisitions, but on moments of love given or withheld, kindness offered or denied, truth embraced or avoided. This suggests something profound about our existence. We are not what we own, but what we have become. Consider for a moment the things you worry about most: the deadlines, the bills, the appearance you maintain, the impression you make. Now imagine yourself at the threshold of death looking back. How many of these concerns would still matter? This shift in perspective isn't meant to minimize your daily life, but to illuminate what ultimately holds meaning within it. Those who have died momentarily and returned often speak of a complete transformation in values. Material success, social status, physical appearance. All these formerly crucial markers suddenly appear as mere props in a theater production, temporarily useful, but ultimately left behind when the play concludes. This revelation isn't new. Throughout history, wisdom traditions have attempted to convey this understanding, yet we continue to act as though our possessions define us. We continue accumulating as if we could take it all with us. Why? Perhaps because facing our impermanence is frightening. Perhaps because our consumer culture constantly reinforces the illusion that happiness comes through acquisition. Or perhaps because truly embracing this truth would require us to live differently, more intentionally, more authentically, more compassionately. Death serves as the ultimate mirror, reflecting back to us the true nature of our lives. One businessman described his near-death experience to Moody this way: "I saw my life unfolding like a movie, but the strangest thing was what caught my attention. It wasn't the deals I'd closed or the money I'd made. It was the moment I stopped to help a stranger change a tire. It was the conversation where I truly listened to my daughter. It was the time I forgave someone who had hurt me deeply. These moments glowed with a significance I had completely missed while living them." This phenomenon appears consistently in accounts of near-death experiences, an illumination of what truly matters, often to the surprise of the experiencer themselves. The metrics by which we typically measure a successful life, wealth, status, power, fame, suddenly reveal themselves as hollow when viewed from the perspective of death. Instead, a different set of values emerges: presence, connection, compassion, growth, and the courage to live authentically. The paradox revealed in these experiences is striking. To live fully, we must embrace our mortality. Those who have faced death often return with an extraordinary zest for life, not despite understanding its temporary nature, but because of it. When we recognize that our time is finite, each moment becomes more precious. When we acknowledge that nothing external truly belongs to us, we can enjoy everything more fully without the suffering that comes from attachment. When we realize that status and appearance are temporary, we can live more authentically, free from the endless pursuit of others' approval. The question remains: if nothing material travels with us, what does? What invisible treasures can we accumulate that somehow transcend the boundary of death? The consistent testimony from those who have glimpsed beyond suggests something remarkable. While we can take nothing physical with us, we do carry forward the essential qualities we've developed. The capacity for love we've cultivated, the wisdom we've integrated, the compassion we've embodied, the consciousness we've expanded through our choices and experiences. These seem to remain somehow as our true eternal possessions. This invisible baggage, these treasures of being rather than having, represent our true wealth. One woman who had been clinically dead for several minutes told Moody, "I understood that everything I had learned, not facts and figures, but the deep understanding that comes from experience, somehow stayed with me. The love I had given and received, the forgiveness I had extended, the truth I had embraced despite fear. These weren't just memories. They were part of me now, inseparable from my essence. This testimony points to something profound about human existence. We are not merely physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences, but spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience. The concept of invisible baggage isn't new. Ancient philosophies and wisdom traditions have long taught that our true nature transcends the physical. What's remarkable is how these age-old teachings align perfectly with what people describe in near-death experiences. Across vastly different cultures and belief systems, the same essential truth emerges. The only things we truly possess are the qualities we've developed, the love we've embodied, the wisdom we've integrated through living. These become not just memories but actual aspects of our consciousness that continue beyond physical existence. Consider how this perspective transforms our understanding of wealth. If the only true possessions are those qualities that become part of our essential nature, then the wealthiest people aren't those with the most external goods, but those who have cultivated the richest internal landscapes. The most successful lives aren't measured by acquisitions but by transformations. How much love we've developed, how much wisdom we've embodied, how much compassion we've integrated into our being. This inverts our conventional understanding of success and achievement, pointing toward a more profound measure of a life well lived. The connections we form with others represent another dimension of this invisible wealth. Not the superficial connections based on utility or circumstance, but the deep bonds formed through authentic presence, through seeing and being seen, through loving and being loved. These connections shape us at the most fundamental level, altering not just our memories but our very being. One physician who experienced clinical death during surgery told Moody, "I realized that every significant relationship in my life had changed me. The love of my parents shaped me. The friendship of certain special people molded me. Even the difficult relationships transformed me. Nothing was lost. It had all become part of who I am." Knowledge, too, appears to travel with us, not as information memorized, but as wisdom integrated. The difference is crucial. Information exists outside us and can be easily forgotten. Wisdom becomes part of us, transforming how we perceive and respond to life. This explains why those who return from near-death experiences often describe not just remembering their lives, but experiencing them with a profound new understanding of their meaning and significance. They don't just recall what happened, they comprehend why it mattered and how it shaped them. Personal growth, the evolution of consciousness through challenge, struggle, and transcendence, emerges as perhaps the most significant form of invisible wealth. Those who have experienced clinical death often report that the growth achieved through difficulties was somehow more valuable than the growth that came easily. One man told Moody, "I saw that the hardest times in my life, the losses, the failures, the struggles, were actually the most important. They forced me to evolve, to become more than I had been. And somehow that evolution of consciousness seemed to be the whole point of being alive." The parallels between these contemporary near-death accounts and ancient wisdom are striking. From Plato's allegory of the cave to Buddhist teachings on impermanence, from Stoic philosophy to indigenous wisdom traditions, we find the same essential message: what appears most real, the material world of possessions and status, is ultimately less substantial than the invisible realm of being, growing, loving, and knowing. What's remarkable is that people who have no knowledge of these philosophical traditions often return from near-death experiences expressing these exact insights, as if they've discovered firsthand the deepest truths that humanity has been trying to articulate for millennia. If these invisible qualities, love, wisdom, connection, growth, are what truly remain when everything else falls away, then they deserve our primary attention. Yet how often do we invest our energy in developing these aspects of ourselves? How frequently do we prioritize accumulating material wealth over accumulating wisdom? How commonly do we focus on appearance rather than essence? The discrepancy between what ultimately matters and what we actually prioritize reveals one of the great tragedies of human existence. We often sacrifice what's eternal for what's temporary, yet facing this truth that we must let go of everything external can be deeply painful. It's not just the loss of possessions that frightens us, but what they represent. Our sense of identity, security, and achievement. The recognition that everything we've worked for, everything we've built, everything we've accumulated, will one day slip from our grasp can trigger profound existential anxiety. One businessman who experienced clinical death following a heart attack described this realization to Moody. It was like watching everything I had identified with dissolve before my eyes. My career, my reputation, my savings, all the things that had defined me suddenly meant nothing. I felt naked, stripped of all the labels and accomplishments I had hidden behind. It was terrifying, but also strangely liberating. This terror of letting go runs deep in the human psyche. We instinctively grasp and cling, not just to physical objects, but to roles, relationships, beliefs, and identities. The ego, that sense of separate self constructed through a lifetime of accumulation, fiercely resists its own dissolution. It builds elaborate defenses against the recognition of impermanence, filling our lives with distractions, pursuits, and possessions that create the illusion of permanence and control. When death approaches, these defenses crumble, forcing a confrontation with reality that many find unbearable. The process of letting go is often described as a kind of death itself, a death of the false self constructed around external possessions and achievements. Like any death, it involves grief, resistance, and eventually surrender. Those who have experienced near death often describe passing through exactly these stages in moments: the desperate clinging to what they know, the anguish of recognizing it cannot last, and finally, the profound peace that comes with acceptance. One woman told Moody, "I fought it at first, this letting go of everything. I tried to hold on to my memories, my identity, my loved ones. But the harder I fought, the more I suffered. When I finally surrendered, there was this incredible release, like putting down a heavy burden I'd been carrying my whole life without realizing it." This surrender doesn't come easily in our daily lives. Our entire culture is built around acquisition and accumulation. Advertising constantly reinforces the message that happiness comes through having rather than being. Career advancement typically means gaining more responsibility, more recognition, more compensation. Even our relationships often revolve around what we get rather than what we give or become. To embrace the wisdom revealed in near-death experiences requires swimming against this powerful cultural current, questioning assumptions so deeply ingrained that we rarely even notice them. The fear of letting go manifests in countless ways. The executive who can't delegate, the parent who can't allow their children independence, the collector who becomes possessed by their possessions, the individual who clings to youth through endless cosmetic interventions. Behind all these behaviors lies the same essential anxiety. If I let this go, what remains of me? This question touches the core of our existential dilemma. If everything external can be taken away, what is the essence that remains? Who am I beyond all my having, doing, and achieving? Those who have faced death and returned often describe a profound discovery. Beneath the layers of acquisition and identification lies a core of being that requires nothing external to validate its existence. One professor who experienced clinical death during surgery told Moody, "I discovered that when everything else was stripped away, my career, my accomplishments, my possessions, even my memories, something essential remained. Not my personality exactly, but a pure awareness, a consciousness that seemed both uniquely mine and somehow connected to everything else. I realized that this essence couldn't be diminished or enhanced by anything external. It simply was, complete and perfect." This recognition, that our essential nature transcends all external accumulation, represents the most profound liberation. It doesn't diminish the pain of letting go, but transforms its meaning. When we recognize that what we truly are cannot be lost or taken away, the process of releasing our attachment to the external world becomes not a tragic surrender, but a homecoming. We let go not because we must, but because we recognize the greater freedom that awaits beyond our clinging. The resistance to this truth runs deep, however. Many who have glimpsed this reality through near-death experiences describe returning to ordinary life and gradually slipping back into old patterns of attachment and identification. The cultural pull toward accumulation is powerful, and the Ego's need for definition through external markers reasserts itself in daily life. This is why wisdom traditions throughout history have emphasized the need for regular contemplation of death, not as a morbid fixation, but as a clarity-bringing practice that helps us live more aligned with what ultimately matters, what remains, when all possessions, identities, and attachments fall away. This question points to what Moody described as the eternal treasure, that which continues beyond the boundary of physical existence. Those who have experienced clinical death and returned consistently describe discovering something remarkable. Consciousness itself appears to be the only true possession. Not consciousness as we typically understand it in our everyday waking state, but consciousness transformed through the journey of a life fully lived. One physician who had been pronounced dead for several minutes before resuscitation told Moody, "What I discovered is that we don't have consciousness, we are consciousness. Everything else is temporary, but this awareness, this being, is what we truly are beneath all the acquisitions and identities. This transformed consciousness carries within it the imprint of all we have become through our experiences. The love we have cultivated doesn't remain as a memory, but as an actual quality of our being. The wisdom we have integrated doesn't stay as information, but as a way of perceiving reality. The compassion we have developed doesn't persist as past actions, but as an essential aspect of our nature. In this way, the question, 'What will you take when everything ends?' reveals itself to be identical to the question, 'Who are you becoming?' Right now, every choice, every experience, every relationship is either expanding and enriching your essential being or contracting and diminishing it. The profound revelation in near-death experiences is that experiences, not possessions, shape who we are at the deepest level." A business executive who clinically died during emergency surgery described it to Moody this way: "I realized that the most valuable moments in my life weren't when I acquired something, but when I experienced something that changed me. Moments of wonder, moments of connection, moments of insight. These experiences hadn't just happened to me, they had literally become me. They had shaped my consciousness in ways that seemed to transcend physical existence. This understanding transforms how we might approach life. If experiences that expand consciousness are our true wealth, then how differently might we invest our time, energy, and resources? Instead of accumulating possessions that will inevitably be left behind, we might prioritize experiences that transform who we are, experiences of beauty, connection, service, creation, and discovery. Instead of building an identity around what we have, we might focus on developing qualities that become part of our essential nature: patience, presence, compassion, courage, wisdom." Raymond Moody's decades of research into near-death experiences suggest something revolutionary about human existence. Consciousness seems to continue beyond physical death, carrying with it not memories exactly, but the essential qualities developed through a lifetime of experiences. This continuity isn't about preserving a separate identity, but about carrying forward the awareness that has been shaped and expanded through living. One woman described it to Moody as, "Not taking my life with me, but taking what my life had made of me." This perspective reveals an extraordinary paradox. The more we give away, the more we have to take with us. Those who live with generosity, who share freely of themselves and their resources, who pour their energy into serving others, appear to be cultivating the very qualities of consciousness that transcend physical existence. One businessman who had a profound near-death experience after a car accident told Moody, "I saw clearly that everything I had kept for myself was lost, while everything I had given away in love was somehow still part of me. The moments of true generosity glowed in my life review, not because they were morally superior, but because they had actually expanded who I was." This principle turns conventional wisdom about wealth and security entirely upside down. If giving enriches our essential being while hoarding diminishes it, then generosity becomes not just morally commendable, but practically wise. If connections formed through authentic presence shape our consciousness in ways that transcend physical existence, then time invested in relationships becomes not a luxury, but a necessity. If beauty, wonder, and meaning expand awareness in ways that continue beyond death, then experiences that cultivate these qualities become not indulgences, but essentials. Living with this awareness doesn't require dramatic changes in external circumstances, but a profound shift in orientation. We can continue our daily activities, working, relating, creating, exploring, but with a different understanding of their purpose. Instead of seeing these activities primarily as means of accumulation or achievement, we might approach them as opportunities for transformation, as moments to expand our capacity for presence, wisdom, love, and wonder. The question becomes not, what am I getting from this? But who am I becoming through this? This shift in perspective illuminates the true purpose of the spiritual journey, not to escape death, but to transform how we live. Death then appears not as an enemy to be feared, but as a teacher that clarifies what matters. Its inevitability doesn't diminish life, but heightens its significance, focusing our attention on what truly remains when everything external falls away. In this light, preparing for death becomes identical to living fully. Both involve releasing attachment to the temporary while cultivating the eternal qualities of consciousness that alone survive. The transition. The final revelation from those who have glimpsed beyond the boundary of death is perhaps the most profound. What we seek through all our desperate accumulation and achievement, security, fulfillment, significance, belonging, already exists within our essential nature. One woman who was clinically dead for several minutes during childbirth told Moody, "I discovered that what I had been searching for my entire life was already within me. The peace, the completeness, the connection. It was all there beneath. The layers of striving and acquiring. Everything I thought I needed to find outside myself already existed in the depths of my own being." This recognition points to the greatest treasure of all, the discovery that what we are in essence needs no validation, no enhancement, no addition. It is already complete. Our journey through life is not about becoming something we are not, but about uncovering what we have always been beneath the accumulated identities and attachments. The question, "What will you take when everything ends?" thus reveals its ultimate answer. Nothing external, because the true treasure has been within, you all along waiting to be recognized, embraced, and lived.